Today I want to talk to you about how to take a design that's straight and put it into something that's curved. So to do that, I'm going to use these 4 blocks from a double wedding ring, and I need to find out what size it is. So I want to find out the largest width, so I'm going to measure from this point right here all the way across to the far right point on the purple block. And I'm just going to measure straight across. That'll give me the widest width of the block because it's an arch. It's going to be skinnier on the bottom. And then I also need to know the height of the arch. And to do that, I need to draw a straight line across from the bottom of this line all the way across to the bottom of the purple block. So from the orange block all the way across. Obviously my line isn't straight, but you get the idea. And then I'm going to want to measure the height from the top of my arch down to this line I've drawn. And most of the time I'm not going to actually draw a line. I will put my ruler down and line it up with one of the, or with both of the points, right? And then just measure straight across on the quilt surface itself. So for my example, I'm going to say that from this point to this point is 6.5 inches. So we're going to do 6.5, and I apologize for my writing. I'm writing with the mouse. And then for the up and down measurement, I'm going to say that that measurement is 2.5. Okay. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to bend something into an arc. To do the bending, you're going to want to go into Quilt CAD. So we're going to go into Quilt CAD. On the top right-hand corner of Quilt Path, I'm going to change my size so that I can just have the one block that I want. So I'm going to go to 1 block across and 1 block deep. And then I'm just going to change my my block sizing. I'm going to change my height to that 2.5 and my width to 6.5. So now I have the size that I need. I'm going to select the pattern that I want to choose. So in this case, I'm going to choose a pattern that I designed called Susan Swirl Double. It can be any pattern that you want it to be. And I'm going to lock my aspect ratio, and I want to size it so that it fits the width of the block. So I'm going to do max width, right? And that's going to keep the aspect ratio correct, but it's going to size it so that, you know, the width is correct for my entire block. And I'm doing that because it's going to be arced, right? So we know that the design needs to be able to shape like this. So it's going to need to be smaller than the height of the block and fill the width of the block. Once you have that set up, you're going to go to the Tools tab up on the top right-hand corner of the screen, and I'm going to go to Row Rippling. What row rippling lets me do is change the shape of an entire row. In this case, it's just going to be 1 repeat, but it's still going to help me arch this block a little bit. So the one that I want to use is valleys, because I want it to go up and then down. I think it's either going to be hills or valleys. We're going to play with both of them and see what they do. So I'm going to tap that I want my top to be a valley and my bottom, and that does work, right? That it is going to shape it to go around. It's a little bit more than what I actually want it to be shaped, though. So I'm probably going to have to play with this a little bit more. This particular design is torquing a little bit more than I want it to. If you do half, it's going to be not quite the right shape. So I do need to do the full arcs. I'm just going to need to then go back in and play with the height a little bit and get it to fill out a little bit more than it is. So I'm going to go back to my layout, and I'm going to unlock my height, and then I'm going to start sizing up just the height a little bit. And you can see it start to to look a little rounder, which is the look that I'm looking for, it's actually swooping my leaves down a little bit, but it's making these look a little more round. I'm okay that they're not perfect circles. I just want them to be a little bit smoother than they are. And some other things you're going to see anytime you start torquing a block like this, you're going to see that it's not super smooth right here. I'm going to fix that in Pattern CAD when I get done. When I get it closer to the height I think I want it, which is probably going to be somewhere in there, then I'm going to go ahead and save what I have. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the quilt button, and it'll make me set my safe area if I haven't done that yet. I'm not worried about what size it is in here. I just want it to save. So I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to put Susan Swirl Bent on here so I know what I was doing, right? And save it. So you want to save it in quilt motion so it saves just the design. If you save it over here in Quilt CAD, it is going to save the quilt setup, not the design. So you would not be able to edit that at this point. I'm going to go ahead and close out of here. So just go to Home. I've already saved it, so I can say no, and then go into Pattern CAD. When I come into Pattern CAD, I'm going to choose Select Pattern and go to my Susan Swirl Bent pattern, right? And I'm going to enlarge this so I can see what's going on. So the area that I would really like it to be smoothed out is right in here. And then I'm going to work on it one little section at a time. So I would like that to be a little bit smoother. And I think I want this one too, but I'm going to come over to the right hand side and hit smooth. And then I'm going to turn my nodes off so you can see the difference. This is going to be very, very small, so it's going to look a little bit jagged, and that's actually okay. But it took off this weird, you can see it over here where it was going over itself. So I'm going to do the same thing over here where I'm going to do unselect, and then I'm going to choose this one. I'm just trying to choose the bottom kind of part of the design like that, and smooth that as well. And see how it looks. And you can continue smoothing things. So if I unselect and I do the little tip up here because I want it a little smoother here too, I can hit that and then look at it. So what I'm trying to say is you can smooth in little teeny weeny increments. If you think you need more nodes, you can add extra nodes in. There's an insert node, but I think it's actually going to work out okay the way that I've got it right now. The idea behind this is that you want to play with it until it looks right to you. And then you do want to stitch it before you stitch it on your quilt and make sure that it stitches smooth. But like I said, this is going to stitch very, very small, and it is projected very big on my screen. So some of the places that look really straight and look strange will not look that way when it's quilted. So make sure that when you're doing editing work that you always go back and then test your design that you have edited before you quilt it on a quilt. Here's another way that you can bend a design to fit it into that arc that we need to. And my arc isn't correct on my screen. This is the marking tool that I brought up, and I kind of drew an arc on here so we could kind of get an idea of what it would look like. Same idea where I had set the height of the entire thing at 2.5 inches. And I just used my grid. So I said that this was, this whole big section was going to be 1 inch. So you can see it's 2.5 inches and 6.5 inches. That's not actually true. These little blocks actually each little one would be 1 inch on the grid, but it gives you an idea of what it would look like, if you were trying to set it. So then the next thing I would want to do is actually set my design using the 4 points of the actual arc. So I would come up here and say, I want this design to go into this area right here. And when I do that, you're going to notice that the design is not where it needs to be. I need it to arc up in the center. And that's okay. And this is when I tell you I did a really bad job of drawing this arc, because these are not even on the same plane. So your piecing would be better than this. I'm just going to go down so that this actually makes a square, rectangle, and not a weird design. It should be much, much closer on your actual quilt than what my drawing in the marking tool looks like. The next thing I'm going to do is then go up to plugins and then use fabric compensation. And what I'm going to do on the bottom of this is say I want this to be an arc, right? Because that's what I want it to do. And I would then come up and say, I'm working on the dark green line, which happens to be the top line right now. I'd bring my long arm up and I would hold it over the top of my arc and say, I need you to arc this top of this design to up here. And I would add a point. And see, you can see how pretty it arced it into that shape. And then on the bottom, I would do the same thing. I would need to change my selection. So I'm going to go around my block. So now my dark green block is over here on the side. It's hard to see because of the marking tool. I'm going to do it one more time and it's now on the bottom. And I'm going to come up and say, my real line's probably about right here. I need you to arc this up as well. And you can see that it really does take that design and puts it where you want it to go. Fabric compensation is an awesome tool, and I really suggest that you do play with it. There are some limitations to it. 4 points is a great choice if you want to do fabric compensation, but not every placement setting is going to let you do fabric comp, unfortunately. So you're going to have to give it enough data for it to actually have the sides, the 4 sides of your block. So that would make it, block will let you do it. I know 4 points will. I'm pretty sure that on point will let you do it as well. And then triangle will let you do it. But things like 1 point, Quilt Path just doesn't have the data for the 4 sides of the block. So you cannot compensate when you're using 1 point. I really encourage you to play with the program. You can't break anything by touching buttons. You're not really going to hurt the program by doing that. So definitely get in there and play and see what you can get it to do. You can do things like what I did with with the marking tool here, and mark what you need to see on your screen so that when this design shapes up into it, you can make sure it's going to quilt where you want it to quilt. I mean, obviously I was guessing where something was going to be. I did a little bit better on the top of my arc than on the bottom. But it does tell me that it would at least quilt into that shape. And it will let you take anything that is straight and obviously put it on a curve like this. You can also put it into like chevrons in different shapes. So get in there and play and see what it'll let you do. If you like this video, please hit the like button on it so that I know that people are actually watching the videos. I would love to have comments on videos too, so that I know what you need to learn or whether or not this is helping you at all. I kind of feel like I'm talking to myself all the time, so knowing that someone is actually listening to me would be super great. So if you'd be willing to do that, I'd really appreciate it. And as always, my company is Threadwaggle on Instagram and APQS Raleigh on Facebook. We would love to have you interact with both of those social media platforms as well. And we look forward to teaching you more Quilt Path in the coming weeks. Thank you.